Hi everybody, I'm Professor Rad, and today we're going to talk about how to write a percentage from an amount, or percentage of an amount. And we're going to be doing both decimals as well as fractions and mixed numbers in this video. So let's get started. We're going to start out with decimals. It says to find a decimal percentage from provided amounts, we're first going to form a ratio. Remember, ratio means fraction of the amount pertaining to the percentage we're interested in to the total amount. So for example, if you want to find out what percent of pumpkins are orange versus like yellow or white or green, things like that, then you would put the number of orange pumpkins on top and the total number of pumpkins on bottom. Or if I wanted to know what percent of people in a room were male, I would put the total number of males up top and the total number of people on the bottom. So whatever it is we're interested in, the color of pumpkins or male or female or things along those lines, then whatever you're interested in goes on top, and then the total amount of everything is going to go on the bottom. Then we'll use division to write the fraction in decimal format, and then we can move the decimal point, oh goodness, I have a typo here, 2 places to the right. And then we'll round our answer as we are indicated. So let's go ahead and work through an example. Now, in the last video, we talked about some ways of summarizing information. So I'm going to use some highlighters to help me summarize here. So I'm going to read through first, and then I'll highlight what seems to be important. So in 2019, a total of 11,195 people ran the Utica Boilermaker 15K road race. Of that group, 6,104 were male and 5,091 were female. There were 626 runners from Utica and a total of 9,100 runners from the state of New York. And then we're going to state to the nearest 10th of a percent, the percentage of runners who were different things. Okay, so let's see. We had a total of 11,195 people, so that's how many we had total. Then we have 6,104 were male. We got male. And then 5,091 were female. Cool. And then we have 626 runners from the city of Utica, New York. Which is where the race is run. And then a total of 9,100 runners from the state of New York. So one thing I want to point out here, I'm not highlighting just the numbers, but I'm also highlighting what they pertain to. So we have the number of people, that's the total, the number that's male, the number from New York. And that highlighting helps me link that number to the context. So for part A, it says we want to find the percentage of the Boilermaker runners who were male. So following this formula, okay, we're going to form the ratio of, in this case, male runners to the total amount who ran. So in the race, there were 6,104 males out of 11,195 people total. Then we're going to divide that to get that in a decimal format. So I'm going to do 6,104 divided by 11,195. Okay, and I get this beautiful number. Now, when we're working with percentages, we don't want to round until the very end of the problem. So I'm going to write this whole big decimal here. So that's going to give me 0.5452434,122. So that is our step 2. Okay, we wrote the fraction decimal form. Now we're going to move the decimal point 2 places to the right to make this a percentage, and then we'll round. So we're going to move it 2 places, so it'll be between the 4 and the 5. and we're rounding to the nearest tenth. So this is going to be 54.5%. Let's go ahead and work on part B now. So part B, we want the percentage of runners who were female. So 5,091 were female out of the total number of people. So let's go ahead and divide that. Okay. And we get 0.4547565878. Okay. Then we'll move the decimal point 2 spots to the right to go from decimal into percentage format. So we're going to have 45.47. Rounding this to the nearest tenth, the 4 is now in the tenths place. So the 7 is bigger than 5, so that 4 is going to go up. So we get 45.5%. And I guess I should be boxing in my answers here, right? So that they kind of stand out. That's my final solution. All right, so if you wanted to, you could pause the video here and work through parts C and D. I'm going to pause and do the same, and then you can unpause and see if your work matches my work, see if we get the same answers. Okay, let's see how we did. So for part C from New York State, from the state of New York, there were 9,100 runners. So that's what I put in the numerator out of the total number of people. And I got this lovely decimal. I moved the decimal point 2 spots to the right so that it was between the 1 and the 2. And then to the nearest tenth meant that 2 I had to be rounding. So since 8 is bigger than 5, this 2 became a 3. Similarly, from Utica, New York, there were 626 runners. So that became my numerator out of our total number. And then this was the lovely decimal I got. And then I moved the decimal point 2 spots and then rounded. So this 5 was in the tenths. Because the 9 was 5 or higher, this 5 turned into a 6. So there we go. Now, you might be wondering, okay, do we really have to use the whole big long decimal? And I always like to write the whole long decimal because if I write not enough, then my rounding is going to be wrong. So for example, a common mistake that I'll see is because we see nearest tenth is for people, for example, here to write just 0.8 because the 8's in the tenths place. But then once you make that a percentage, that'll be 80%. And that's different from the answer we got in the end. So when you're dealing with percentages, it's always safer to write the whole decimal out. Really, you want to make sure you're going at least 2 places beyond what you need. But in this case, yeah, if I round too soon, I'm going to get some rounding error happening. Okay, so we want to avoid doing that. So, yeah, so let's look at part E. It says, also state the percentage of runners from New York who were from Utica. Round your answer to nearest tenth of a percent. Now, E is different from D, even though we're looking for percentages from Utica, because in part D, it says we're looking at the percentage of the Boilermaker runners, and in E, we're looking for the percentage of runners from New York. That's what we had highlighted before in yellow. So instead of looking out of all of the runners, our total for this problem is going to be just the total number of runners from New York State. So when I form my fraction, there were 9,100 runners from the state of New York. So that's going to be my denominator. And my numerator is the people who were from Utica. So there were 626 runners from Utica. So now let's go ahead and find that decimal value. Okay, and we get 0.06879, 120,879. Move that decimal point. And because of the 7, that 8's going to round to a 9. So we get 6.9%. All right, so let's take a look at an example where we have some mixed numbers or fractions instead of decimal answers. Okay, so to find a fraction or mixed number percentage from given values, we're going to do pretty much the same thing we were doing before. We're going to find the ratio that we're interested in. So it's whatever you're interested out of the total amount. And then you're going to multiply by 100 and label percent. Now, this multiplying by 100 is exactly what we were doing when we moved a decimal point 2 spots to the right. So you could just use this set of rules if you had decimal problems as well. We're essentially doing exactly the same thing. And then you can convert your answer to the desired format and simplify if needed. Okay, so let's go ahead and work through a few problems together. So this says in a bag of 275 marbles, there are 150 red marbles. Got my highlighter ready here. 87 blue marbles. I don't have a blue highlighter, so I'm going to use purple. 36 yellow marbles. And then just 2 green marbles. And we're going to give our answers as a fraction or mixed number. And then let me highlight the total number of marbles as well. Okay, so there are 275 total. All right, cool. I'm just going to close up my highlighters here so they don't dry out. Pardon me while I do that. And then I'm just going to put a note to myself here. This is the total, since it didn't have that word. Okay. Part A says, what percent of the marbles in the bag are blue? So for part A, we're going to take the total number of blue marbles, which was 87, and put that out of the total number of marbles, which is 275. So that's our fraction we've got up here. Then we're going to multiply that by 100 and label it as a percentage. So I'm going to have 87 over 275 times 100. And that gave me 348, is that? Yes, 348 out of 11%. And this one, it says as fraction or mixed number, so this would work as my answer. Now, if it did specify mixed number percent, then I would use my calculator to change the format of my answer. So in this case, I would do Shift SD for this brand of calculator, and I would get 31 7/11%. If I wanted a decimal answer, I would hit just the SD, and it's giving me my decimal answer. All right, let's do another one together. So B says, what percent of marbles in the bag are green? Okay, well, we have 2 green marbles in the bag and 275 total. Then we're going to multiply by 100. That makes it the percentage. So 2 out of 275 times 100. Oh, make sure I hit that over there. times 100. And that gives me 8 out of 11%. So notice this time it gave me a proper fraction result instead of an improper fraction result. So if I tried to make this a mixed number, nothing's going to happen because it's not improper. So it has to be just a fraction format. All right, and then let's try part C. So it says, what percent of the marbles in the bag are not red? Oh. So this one says not red. So in this case, I'm going to have to do a little bit more work than just putting the number of red marbles, because I want the number of marbles that are not red. So I guess there are like 2 ways to go about that in this one. Let's see. I could add up all of the blue, the yellow, and the green, and that could give me some marbles that are not red. Or I could take the total number, subtract out the red marbles, and that'll tell me how many aren't red. So I think I'm going to do that. So because of the not, I'm going to do the total number minus the number of red marbles. I get 125. So the not red, which is what I'm interested in, is going to go up top. The total is going to go in the bottom, and times 100 to make it a percentage. So 125 out of 275 times 100. And we get 500 over 11%, which is the same as 45 and 5/11%. Da, 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 da. There we go. So sneaky, that one. Now there's another way we could have done this one. So another way we could have solved this is we could have taken the percent that are red and then subtract that from 100%, right? So if I tell you like 20% of my coins are quarters, that means 80% of the coins are not quarters. So I could have done 100% minus the 150 out of 275 times 100. So let's see if when I do this, I end up getting the same answer. So I'm going to do this part first because of order of operations. 600 out of 11. Okay. So 100 minus that gives me 500 out of 11, which is the same answer we had over here. So yeah, whether you subtract the total minus the amount you have and make that result a percentage, or if you take the amount you have and make that into a percentage and then subtract from 100%, you're going to get the same answer either way. Alrighty, so I've got some now you try questions for you to work through. We have a question that specifically asks you to round, so it's specifically asking for a decimal. One that's asking for a mixed number result, and another one that asks for an exact answer, so likely a fraction or mixed number in the end. So feel free to work through this. In the next video, we're essentially going to be going backwards. So instead of giving you numbers and asking you to find a percentage, I'm going to give you a percentage and ask you to say, well, how many people does that percent represent? So looking forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, have a great day.